Once upon a time, the point of school was to educate people to sit still in factories and offices. As you rightly say, robots can do those locally. We can offshore some of the clerical stuff and dumb it down with AI as well. So it begs the question, if that's what you perceive the point of school to be, and 70% of the jobs are going to disappear, and we've also got this jobs haven't been invented yet kind of cliche thing, why would you invest scarce government funds, austerity pennies, educating people for jobs they don't need? So the whole purpose of education needs to be reconsidered. So that we then need to say, well, actually, we need to educate people to not have work. We need to educate them to be cultural consumers, to appreciate the arts, so that we can educate people to make art and we can educate people to enjoy their art and not just sit and watch box sets all the time, maybe.
This is the Ideas Lab podcast, where you can learn from great creative and entrepreneurial minds how to turn your ideas into original businesses, books and brands. Because in a crowded world, it pays to stand out. This is your host, John Williams, best-selling author and founder of the Ideas Lab London. The Guardian newspaper described Nick Corston as a man on a mission, and his mission is to put art and creativity back into schools. As we see more and more pressure on the public education system in the UK and in other countries, we are seeing music, art and creative subjects getting cut out of the syllabus. Nick will explain why that is a terrible decision. And I have to say I agree with him as we enter an era when, even if your work is skilled, it could be outsourced to someone in another country or even to an AI. So what we need to be able to do is to think creatively, whatever work we are doing. Aside from that, Nick makes a compelling case for why art and creativity is a powerful way to connect communities. And if you have a mission of your own to change the world for the better in some way, then I think you'll get a lot of inspiration and ideas from listening to what Nick has done with his organisation STEAMco. So Nick, welcome.
Hello, John. Thank you for inviting me to East London.
That's all right. You're the founder of STEAMco. Tell me what STEAMco does.
Oh, goodness. STEAMco is a project that really believes we should put creativity first in our schools, in our work and in our lives. And obviously the business world gets that. Yeah. A lot of people get the value of creativity in life and in society. But it's under pressure. There's a lot of pressure on creativity and creative subjects and the arts in schools. So we campaign for, we celebrate and we action creativity by helping school communities run little creativity festivals, by running events and gobbing off on Twitter and social media.
And you're everywhere on that, and you're very good at getting other people involved. What do you think? What is going on with creativity? Do you think how is it under pressure in education then? I know we promised not to be too negative when we were having a chat earlier, but we've got to at least cover this, haven't we? Because you and I are on the same page, I think, that we feel like, everyone's trying to, people in the UK, for instance, and probably America too, are trying to up the standards of the reading, writing, arithmetic kind of stuff, get higher grades, but in the process they're throwing out creativity, which is not a good idea in my opinion.
Well, it's fun actually, because I love going to sort of, I was going to say drinks receptions and cocktail parties, which sounds very fancy, but
it's usually when you're asking for money.
I'll be honest, I'd go to the opening of a crisp packet, so I don't read too much into that. But I do love it when people say, well, I say to people, have you heard of Ken Robinson? And they'll say, no, I've never heard of Ken who? And I say, okay, right. Have you heard of the TED Talks? And they sort of choke on their wasabi peas when I say that. Of course I've heard of the TED Talks. How dare you imply I haven't heard of the TED Talks? And I'll say, well, okay, fair enough. And then I go below the belt and I say, right, well, so Ken Robinson's TED Talk is the #1 TED Talk, 300 million viewings.
Wow.
In various platforms. And, okay, and then I have to pick them up off the floor and not totally humiliate if I want to continue the conversation. So I'll then say, of course, nobody goes to the TED Talks to see what's #1 that month. They kind of go wherever Google takes them based on the subject or the link. So don't worry, it wasn't a trick question. But basically, the fact that the most watched TED Talk is by a bloke from Liverpool about creativity and how schools can teach it out of our kids is interesting for two reasons. One, because it means that there are people in the world who care about creativity. And two, there is a story to be told about the fact that schools are doing that or can do that. So I saw that, and I'm very aware about being positioned as too much of a Ken Robinson fanboy, because I am and I'm not. But very inspiring talks, But for me, we've got to walk the bloody talk. It's all very well watching TED Talks. It's like sort of flipping streamed view box sets. Let's just watch 1,000 box sets of TED. What are we going to do? So I saw that. I read half a book called What's the Point of School, which is interesting. And you did an event with us where we discussed that one evening, didn't we? Down in Hackney, that film evening. And I went to a festival where there was a whole bunch of really cool activities going on in the field. And I thought, this is amazing. How can I bring this experience, this festival experience, and here we are on the eve of our summer, hopefully. I think we're up for a record-breaking hot weather Easter weekend. So really how do we bring that creative festival experience into a school? But more to the point, how do we engage the community to help deliver it? Yeah. So really that's the kind of crux of it. So there is an issue with creativity in schools, and this is why I kind of stumble. This is why I have to say I'm just a dad, so no tricky questions to all these clever academics or clever political types or clever conspiratorial theorist types, because I didn't have a flipping clue what was going on. But I thought, why on earth would anybody want to teach creativity out of kids?
Yeah.
When I've had 30 years in the advertising, brand innovation, experience design industry, where it was our bread and butter, and then you start digging into it and you realise that there are possibly some conspiracy views that say, well, we don't actually want citizens that are too creative or who actually want to live too rich a life, because we actually just want to sit at home and consume. Creative education is quite expensive. We've got sort of, 8 million kids in schools. You buy them all a pot of paint, that's 80 million pounds, You've got to find overnight. So it's an expensive game. But then I actually had a bit of a come to Jesus moment a few weeks ago, actually, listening to James O'Brien, actually, who's one of my heroes in LBC. I do listen to old James O'Brien.
Yeah, a bit, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. And you can listen to him on Catch Up now, but it's just really good. And he's got this agenda that basically just about everything that's wrong in the country is fed into our ears through the media, so particularly the sort of the right-wing red top media, and they're feeding this message into people's ears. And I used to think that was to reinforce some sort of political agenda, but I don't believe it is. I think it's just feeding hate into people's ears makes them buy papers. It's purely greed and money driven.
Yeah, I suspect that's actually true. I don't want to get too far off topic, but I think feeding the animal brain sells papers a lot better. If you published a newspaper tomorrow morning where the front page news was everything is fine, no one would buy it. So you have to kind of have bad news in there. And I think, but this point about creativity is really interesting, because what we're seeing is, what I wrote about Screw It, Let's Play, which is almost 10 years ago now, is that we're seeing that anything that you can do that's even if it's really pretty skilled, like law, medicine, all these things that are easily definable and repeatable and have a set answer, they are increasingly getting outsourced, either to somewhere offshore, some equally smart, well-educated kid in India, China, the Philippines, or whatever, or to a software system that can do it just as well. So the only thing you can't outsource is creativity. That's one of the things you can't outsource. I think it's 3 C's: creativity, caring, and collaboration, or something like that. So that ability, which I think is rife in the UK, to come up with original things. So the advertising industry is legendary in the UK. It's considered probably the best in the world. The media industry, drama and comedy and stuff is really respected. Music is really respected. So, and also the special effects industry, which I used to work in, has a big base in the UK, and they still shoot big films like Star Wars and stuff in the UK and do the post-production. So this is stuff that drives, apart from banking, creativity and innovation is probably one of the big powerhouses of the UK, or something where we have an awful lot of potential and natural ability. And yet what we're seeing is people like Michael Gove, who was Education Secretary, or whatever it's called, trying to remove it almost from the education system. I mean, is that a fair summary?
It's a fair summary. Michael Gove's tenure as Education Secretary here in Britain was to take everything into a very academic focus. Yeah. I mean, we were at the bottom of the league tables for literacy and numeracy, so they focused on literacy and numeracy.
Which is important stuff. I mean,
I'm not... They're bread and butter.
It's shocking that people are coming out of school and they couldn't string a sentence together. So, absolutely. I mean, I'm not, it's not as if
but I'm not convinced that the Michael Gove reforms would have helped people string a sentence together, because oracy, which is the kind of literacy, numeracy, oracy, is not a focus in the curriculum as such, in a very, very major way, as much as literacy and numeracy were. So basically, what we've now got are kids who are being taught to pass tests.
Yeah.
Which, to your point, robots can actually do if you're allowed to take the smartphone into the exam. So the sort of big point is, why would anybody kill creativity? So I believe that those newspapers have done it because it was quite an easy target and something to sort of sell newspapers on the back of. But essentially, they've created a population which doesn't do critical thinking, doesn't second guess the fake news and the fake lies. So there's an element to that. But to your point about the creative industries, the creative industries are worth over 105 billion a year to UK GDP. All the creative industries you've described. But you could argue we don't need to educate every single person in the country to be a video editor or a graphic designer or an innovator or a creative thinker or a collaborative worker to fuel our creative industries. We have to start, and this takes us back to that other question, what is the point of school? Once upon a time, the point of school was to educate people to sit still in factories and offices. As you rightly say, robots can do those locally. We can offshore some of the clerical stuff and dumb it down with AI as well. So it begs the question: if that's what you perceive the point of school to be, and 70% of the jobs are going to disappear, and we've also got this jobs haven't been invented yet kind of cliche thing, why would you invest scarce government funds, austerity pennies, educating people for jobs they don't need? So the whole purpose of education needs to be reconsidered. So that we then need to say, well, actually, we need to educate people to not have work. We need to educate them to be cultural consumers, to appreciate the arts, so that we can educate people to make art and we can educate people to enjoy their art and not just sit and watch box sets all the time, maybe.
That's a tough sell in the austerity era.
It is a tough sell in the austerity era. But then when you look at knife crime and all this violence and people lacking in empathy and lacking in its self-expression abilities and all this sort of stuff, and we were talking earlier about Plan B's video where he talks about music giving people reasons to live, giving them self-respect, keeping them on the straight and narrow and keeping them out of prison. But it feels like we're treading a sort of dangerous tightrope here. Either side of this tightrope is conspiratorial, neoliberal, right-wing sort of black holes we don't want to fall into.
Which I'm not sure I buy that. No. I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, and I don't really buy that it's it's a means to keep the people compliant. It is interesting that people, I say, and other people say that China is. The more I learn about what China's doing, I'm really impressed. Not politically, but what they're doing in terms of their forward thinking, their ability to think 30 years out is absolutely remarkable, which I see almost nothing of in our own government, which is distracted by Brexit. But never really had very much of it anyway.
It's never been able to see more than 4 years ahead, has it, really?
No, and it's partly the benefit of having a dictatorship, of course, that you can think long term. Singapore has the same benefit as well. But
for a moment I was saying, we live in a dictatorship. I had to stop and think then.
Part of the benefit of them living in a sort of one-party state.
Theresa May dictatorship.
Whatever it is. Yeah, that wouldn't catch on with it.
It's totally collaborative, isn't it?
But people used to say, well, China can do all these amazing things, and the education system is churning out really well-educated kids and great technology skills. And, in the old days, we used to make phones for American brands or European brands. Now they have their own brands. So they're kind of moving up the value chain or whatever you might call it. But also they're paying attention to the fact that everyone's going, well, Chinese education system, the Chinese kids are not coming out being creative enough. And I said, okay, well, we're going to teach creativity then. So they're actually putting creativity into the education system. So they're almost, so we're going to see what happens in the future with, advertising and film and stuff like that when there's this massive movement towards creative education in China.
Well, what will happen in China is they won't, to my point earlier, they won't give every one of the 60 billion kids in China, whatever there are, a creative, rich, broad and balanced curriculum. They'll educate most of them to go out in the fields and work a rice plough or whatever. And there will be a small preserve that get this amazing education. Singapore, China, Dubai, they've got incredible education systems for the people they need to educate.
Right, so it's only for the kind of the upper kind of echelons.
It's kind of a sort of elite, and that brings us back to the British situation, you see. So you could argue, I think that there are statistics that sort of at any one time something like 70 or 80% of the bands in the top 40 or in the Brit Awards were privately educated.
Yeah.
Which is all we need. We don't need any more because we can generate enough pop music and enough filmmakers, enough video editors. So this helps me understand, because I get very cross with left or right wing people with sort of being angry about each other because they don't stop to understand the other side. So grammar schools winds everybody up in England, which is essentially an elitist secondary school system where you have to pass a test to get in. But that makes sense if you accept that we can only afford to educate so many people and they're private, and in fact the parents are paying for that, so that's great, that saves us a load of money. We'll have this layer called grammar school for everybody else to have the chance to jump into that, and that will give us some social mobility ticks, and everybody else, as long as we can educate them enough to function and do some basic stuff. And you know what? I'd rather my kids went through that latter education than being dragged through some irrelevant academic nonsense, which is what's happened in many cases, this Michael Govian type thing, which doesn't value the 21st century skills and creativity and collaboration. But
but that's an interesting point, though. So you're saying it's not really just to fuel the creative industries. It's also, I mean, I would say it's a way of thinking, though. It's a very useful thing to be able to come up with new solutions to things. Much of my work with people who are first-time entrepreneurs, because our own courses for, I've helped thousands of people to go through that process of becoming an entrepreneur or to think more creatively. And the work is not learning how to use some app or learning how marketing works or something like that. You can Google all that. What the work is changing your mindset from, I'm going to wait for the orders to come in and I'm going to wait for permission. And you and I are big fans of Seth Godin on this, who talks about waiting for permission, waiting to be picked. And instead of that going, I'm going to create this thing and that it may fail and that I'm willing to take that risk and I'm willing to put myself out into the world. That is the hard work that has to be done when people become an entrepreneur. And I think that is it's not just about entrepreneurship, but anyone who breaks the rules. I mean, what you're doing, what I do, anyone who's doing something original and that dares to form something new is going to have to do things that are not taught in the education system. Well, that's part of it, isn't it?
Exactly. You're kind of going into this box of skills, which they call these 21st century skills. So the collaboration, working together. Yeah, you could argue that just getting up off your ass and doing something is a 21st century skill. It's something that we're complete psychos. It's what we do. We just can't sit still. We've always got that. I go swimming to try and calm down and get away from the email. I come out with 10 more things I want to do. And you made me stop and think, actually, because I'm working with school communities all across the country in various sort of social demographic levels, estate communities. Now, I want to run some events this summer. And I've got this thing called the art of coding, the art of DJing, the art of festivals. I want to do an event called the art of community, where we get children and parents and teachers from these communities, and some of them will be very challenged communities, to talk about their arts, their passions, their dreams. And I did a little project on the back of the Elton John Lewis film. I don't know if did you see that film when I went gallivanting around the country and gave a little lad a train set in Leeds.
Oh yeah.
I was nuts. So I ended up I borrowed a car for 2 weeks, drove around the country, showing the Elton John Lewis ad to kids. I showed it to 10,000 kids in 2 weeks, and we discussed what it represented. Blah blah blah.
What was the advert about?
It was the John Lewis Christmas ad with Elton John, who gets given a piano as a little boy, and it traces his career.
So it's a true story.
I'd like to think so. Don't burst my bubble, for goodness sake. I believed it. And basically, when I was in Sheffield, I blagged a Lego train set from John Lewis in Sheffield because my dad gave me a train set when I was 1, and the story is that kind of inspired me to be a maker and a creative. And then I've got a master's degree in electronic engineering, for what it's worth, and. So I blagged this Lego train set from John Lewis in Sheffield and then took it to this little lad in a school on the toughest estate in Leeds, really challenged community, lovely family, really lovely. And I gave him this train set, and his mum sent me a video of him opening it on Christmas Day. It made you cry, so it's heartbreaking stuff to see. And then they came down to London and spoke at our event in Parliament where we launched this year-long art. Well, you were there,
I was there.
Yeah, of course you were. So he had his Lego trains out in Parliament. It was a wonderful sight, and he said a few words. And we went to the Science Museum that night, or the next day, and I took him down there, and I was chatting to the mum, and I said, well, what do you want to do? She said, I dream about being a teaching assistant. So I don't think she's necessarily got many qualifications, but she's got a dream and a passion, and the school has supported her doing her qualifications. Turns out the dad who came down on the bus, because only got 2 train tickets, he came down on the bus with his daughter. He finds old toys and skips and does them up. Yeah. And he does a bit of engineering, and he's passionate about his mountain bikes. Now, I'm careful what I say, but they struggle financially and sort of providing for the family, but they do the best they can. And that dad now plays with that little boy with the train set.
Yeah.
And the mother took me aside and said, I can't thank you enough because you've connected my son with his dad again.
That's great, yeah.
But then she sent me a photo the other day of the granddad coming round. And I don't want to make too big a fuss of this, so I have mentioned it on another podcast recently, but my dad's got an electric train set that he was packing up and trying to get rid of, and he sent it to me. And I sent it up to those guys.
Oh, yeah.
And now they're clearing out the shed.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
So James May the other day did a TV programme talking about Hornby Trains, the electric train company of our youth. And when
James May off
Top Gear.
Top Gear, yeah.
So when Britain led the world in making model railways and model cars, and this business, Hornby Trains are going out of business very, very quickly. And they've said, we're not in the business of making trains for kids. We're in the business of making model collectibles for adults. And my view is, well, good luck with that because they're going to die fairly soon. You've got a 10-year window of opportunity there. But here's a community. Here's a train set. Here's a family. So what I want to do is to get those people at a mini TED Talk type event to celebrate them and to share that.
Yeah.
Now, the point I was going to make, and so be careful what I say here, but I've said to them, well, get me loads of names to get some names in our... We had a page in the Guardian newspaper the other week with hundreds of names, and get me some names, and they're not totally proactive, to say the least, because they haven't had that experience, those opportunities. They were dragged through school. A lot of people, and I really am very sensitive to sounding patronising, and that these are skills.
But I had that as well. I mean, even though I was from a better off family, I still grew up with kind of learned helplessness. And possibly from a lot of medical stuff I had when I was younger, but sometimes you just develop that as a child, and the education system also, I think, develops a certain amount of learned helplessness. And
what do you mean by learned helplessness?
So learned helplessness is a psychological term, and it means, it's from research, but it means that basically you start to feel that there's no point trying because you can't get what you want. So if you get a lot of disappointments early on, but if you're in school, if you end up, imagine if you end up in, I don't know, something like whatever Borstal is called these days.
Proust, yeah.
Proust, right, okay. You end up in one of those, you can very quickly end up feeling quite helpless. A
bit like the fleas in a jam jar, that experiment.
Yeah. So you take the lid off and still don't jump out. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's a metaphor, right? And it works as a metaphor. So I had to learn to realise my own agency. And I think that's part of what creativity is about. So I think it is broader than you say about just creating people who would be good in the creative industries. It's about creating kids who have a sense of agency. Now, you could argue that is problematic for a government or for a society that wants people to be compliant. I don't know if I really believe that. I do wonder what's going to happen in China when they start teaching kids creativity and start thinking out the box, because that's obviously not a country where you can...
Well, yeah, they'll be used to thinking outside the box within a box, won't they?
Okay, yeah, maybe.
But funny enough, my mum puts a finger on why I'm like I am, the sort of nutcase I am, and this kind of Tasmanian devil devil kind of running around in circles. Yeah. And basically, when I was a kid, we didn't have a television until I was 4, because I virtually hadn't invented them, I don't think. And then when we did, we had one channel of black and white. And then my brother came along, and then we had a TV. So he only ever knew TV. So we'd be sitting side by side. I'll be making stuff with Lego, and he'd be zoned out watching the 1 hour of children's television a day or whatever it was. So there's a lot to be said for that. And you read these stories about Steve Jobs' kids or whatever, or Larry, all these sort of tech giants at Google and Apple and Microsoft, all these sort of uber tech giants who've got all the gadgets and all the apps and all the kit. They don't let their kids anywhere near it.
And so I've heard. Yeah, is that actually?
That's the irony, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's very, very difficult. My kids just they sort of hoover it up, and I'm this crap dad because I'm working from home a lot, and I'm totally zoned out, just getting stuff done. And the kids are at home and they're playing Minecraft. They play Minecraft all day, and I wouldn't have noticed sometimes. It's shocking, really, but yeah.
So you're a big fan of Seth Godin's concept of art. You're wearing a T-shirt that says "I love art."
That was designed by a mother in Soho school. Actually, we did a little pop-up in an advertising agency in Soho, and they all came up after school. Yeah, I'm quite chuffed with that. She got the heart's a bit big, but no, whatever. I was pleased with that.
So why don't you explain what this actually means, though? Because this is related to what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, there are two angles to that, really. I'm very good at reverse engineering and post-rationalising stuff. Where am I today and how did I get here? And that was always the plan. There's this thing in education called STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths. And it's hard to believe that 10 years ago, whatever, they were under pressure.
Yeah.
They were under pressure because good old Michael Gove had put this obsession with literacy and numeracy that even science was at risk, technology was at risk, engineering, you can't make it up. Okay, maths was there. So they came up with this acronym STEM and got loads of attention, loads of money to refocus on these subjects, which is fine, makes good sense. Then the arts realised and the creative subjects realised they were being pushed out. So they said, well, we're going to have this thing called STEAM. It was invented by a chap called John Mader at Massachusetts Institute, Rhode Island School of
He's a famous designer, isn't he?
Yeah. He's done some good TED Talks. So I think he coined the STEAM phrase, but there's a lady in West Virginia who also coined it, whatever. And science, technology, engineering, art, and maths. So you could argue that it addresses the left brain STEM stuff and the right brain art stuff and brings them together. So to some people it's acting a science lesson. To other people it's creative use of technology, whatever. Do you know, I don't give a damn for acronyms. For me it's about creativity. And going back to that book that I kind of half read when I started STEAM Code, is What's the Point of School? Professor Guy Claxton, who wrote that book, says that as parents, as teachers, as society, our responsibility to our young people is to help them understand what they want to be great at and to then help them follow that dream. Right, that ticks a big box. Okay, so that's brilliant. So Seth Godin came up with this thing back in one of his books. He's got this lovely book called The Icarus Deception, which is, do you know the story of Icarus?
Yeah.
So what's the story of Icarus?
Well, everyone thinks it's the don't fly too high, don't fly too high or too close to the sun, otherwise your wings will melt and you'll end up crashing to the ground.
But the other angle of that is they also told him
don't fly too low because otherwise you're crashing to the ocean.
And just as you said that, a big bird just dive bombed past the river into the canal, so that was perfectly on cue. So basically it's all about, here are the rules, don't stray across the line, basically. And we need to be teaching our kids to break rules as long as it's safe, and because nobody ever disrupted or changed anything by following the rules. So Seth has got this thing about art and artists. Artists got nothing to do with paint. So art is what we call it when what we do might connect us to somebody else. Yeah. So I really love that, because for me, if we're going to fight a battle for art and creativity in schools and society and work, here's a great way of doing it that debunks this elitism of art, the fine art, the Royal Academy stuff, which is fine, that belongs there, but not exclusively. Let's try and popularise the word art. And I don't believe this is what Seth Godin's objective was, but it's mine. I want this word art to be acceptable. I want people to think, yeah, my art is. So whether your art's fashion, football, or computing, or colouring, or painting, photography, whatever. It's whatever you're passionate about, fashion or football. Yeah. I go into schools and say, who likes art? All the girls' hands go up, and a few boys, okay, and then the boys' hands go down and they realise the mates haven't put their hands up. Who likes football? All the hands go up. Would you agree that Ronaldo is a really... Ronaldo's a footballer, isn't he? Yeah. I used to say Mourinho, he's the manager. I for a year I was saying that, don't you think the manager's a good footballer? Yeah, does his talent connect with you? Do you think you have to work hard at that talent, at that art? And so really, yeah. So we've got this hashtag festival thing we're running called Art Connects.
Yeah. So art is anything that connects us, and also it's like a personal expression where it somehow connects with other people. And also the idea that Seth talks about, what I mentioned earlier, which is that art is anything where it might not work. So when you create a work of art, you don't know where it's going to connect with someone. When you create an event, when you write a book, when you make a piece of music, you don't know whether people are going to like it, whether they're going to connect with it, or they're just going to go, I don't care. And so there's always an element of risk in it, and that's something that you have to learn. I think the education system needs to teach that, because that's
fear of failure, fail often,
getting
kind of classic
over
innovation buzzwords, aren't they?
Yeah, and being able to do that. But also, I mean, it's but the act of creating a work of art is therefore a vulnerable act. That's a tough thing to teach those boys who won't put their hands up when you ask them if they like art. They won't even admit that they
There was a lovely. I went off on a little tangent this morning on the back of my minimum prep for this podcast session, because you did a lovely one with is it Jamie Catto?
Oh yeah.
He did and I saw one of his one giant leap films, and there's a guy in there talking about art, and he said the unique usefulness of art is its unusefulness, but it gives you a freedom which is the most powerful and most valuable thing in the world. We all think that time is the most valuable thing, but freedom is an incredible value and attribute, isn't it? And there's something about that as well, it's that zone.
Yeah. Brian Eno said art is anything you don't need to do. So he said, and he's a big hero of mine. So he said, like, for instance, you look at hair. You need to get your hair cut if you want to be able to see, most of us anyway, if you want to be able to see, at some point it's going to get so long it's going to be impractical. But you don't need a hairstyle. So the hairstyle part is art. That's design, that's art, that's culture. So anything where, you might need to communicate to somebody to ask them for some food in order that you can eat, but you don't need to prepare a dish that looks absolutely beautiful. So that's art. Or you don't need to learn how to write poetry to communicate with somebody. So that's
okay.
art.
It's almost like the sort of the 80-20 rule. It's the 80% bit. You don't need to put that much energy in.
Although, I don't know. What we're talking about is culture. The whole of culture is essentially unnecessary. In terms of survival, and culture and all the meaning that culture is stuff we just made up and is.
It is interesting, and you can almost imagine the dystopian spiral that you'd sort of go down if all those frills and that art and that culture just was banished, and we ended up in this Orwellian society with. Yeah. Well, the Orwellian society we're most likely to end up with is a Black Mirror type society, really, isn't it? Just sort of full of content and screaming ads and.
Are we there already?
Not far off.
So you said something. One of the things you wanted to talk about was kind of engagement packs or engagement.
Well, the thing about the Art Connects thing, I think, is connections. Because a lot of what you do is inspiring, supporting, encouraging, providing the resources for people to fulfil their ideas, to fulfil their dreams, their projects, the coaching and the writing and the support work you do. And what we're building with Steamco is this engagement framework that enables people to actually exercise that creativity, that art, whatever they are or are not interested in. I mean, where we're sitting here now in a part of London, which is the creative quarter of London, East London, these apartments, these houses are occupied, but in many cases by young, creative hipster types, yourself included or excluded, depending on whether that's the right thing to call you or not, John.
I don't know, qualify as young, but I'll take it.
But people who bursting with creativity, bursting with energy, bursting with enthusiasm, which their occupations on a 9-to-5 basis may not allow them to exercise. Social media, Instagram lets everybody be a sort of faux creative and to communicate and express themselves. So what we want to do is, and what we are doing is creating this framework engagement platform where people can get involved and help run these creativity festivals in schools, where we provide all the resources and all the framework, and people just come in and help by performing fairly simple roles. I mean, I work with kids who can't use scissors. The challenge is to not cut it for them, but to show them how to use a pair of scissors or how to fold something. Or I mean, I've got a bit of paper over there. We could sit here and make a rocket while we're talking. I have 2 bits of paper and some sticky tape and a bit of plastic pipe, but. They're fine motor skills, which I take for granted. I don't know if it's years of Rizzler rolling that sort of set me up for that. Or, and the other extreme is if we can tap into the creativity in our communities, and people don't have to be massively creative to do this. I mean, some of the happiest moments, and grandparents come back in and they sit there because grandparents are just patient. A bit like Siddhartha Mitra's super grannies on the internet, where he just gets grannies to sit on Skype video calls.
Yeah, that's a TED talk, isn't it? And I went to see him talk after you told me about him. And he was in India at the time, and he found he had the idea of if you just put a computer in front of these kids, like from a small village in India who got no money and don't even speak any English, and you just let them play with it and you don't tell them how to do it, they'll learn really quickly. And so he put one in like a cash machine on the outside of the university or wherever it was he was working. And these local kids came up and said, well, what is that? And he goes, I don't know, I think it's some kind of computer. Go, can we use it? He goes, yeah, okay. And so he just left them. And then they played around with it and they learned how to use this Windows computer. And then at some point he came back and they said, he said, what are you doing now? And they said, oh, we're playing the game. He goes, well, how did you download the game? He goes, and they say, well, we just Googled it. I go, well, but wasn't it in English? Yeah. I mean, they taught themselves enough English to work out how to download a game and play it. And then the thing you're talking about is he discovered the best thing to facilitate that process is to get a grandmother who just sits there and watches them and goes, oh, aren't you clever? Oh, what are you doing now?
What they're doing.
That's amazing. They don't need to understand anything. They just do that. And for me, it reminds me of Carl Rogers and his qualities for a therapeutic relationship. It's just bang on. And so that's another TED Talk worth looking up, Sugata Mitra.
It's funny because I was with my godparents the other day, 80-year-olds, and I gave them one of my newspapers and told them what I was doing. So that's great because your dad's never been able to explain it because he hasn't got a clue what you do. But my parents are always very supportive and nod, but they've not had a clue what I do. It's hilarious.
So what you're doing is, let's get it in one sentence.
Well, what we're doing is we're helping kids find their art, connecting kids with their art and connecting communities with their schools by running these creativity days. And another level really is to tap into famous creative people. You know, I'd love to get some Nile Rodgers teaches kids to play ukulele, but you are the facilitator, or Ray Winston teaches improv. So that you are, White Van Driving dad. Ray Winston, I've seen him on the telly. Does the betting ads. He's going to teach you how to do improv. So listen and sit up straight.
So so some celebrity provides the content.
They provide the content, but the parents
and then normal parents come in or help us. So what you're saying is, I know you enlisted a friend of mine. I almost came up to Newcastle when Sugata Mitra was doing something with you.
That's right. Yeah.
And couldn't make it in the end. But my friend Richard came and did something with you and did a Lego.
Richard Atherton. I met him at one of your book launches, and I said, "What do you do?" He said, "Oh, I run Lego workshops for executives and C-suites. So good luck with that. Do you fancy doing a real day's work?" And he said, why? I said, "Well, I need someone to facilitate a Lego workshop in a STEAM Code Day in a school in West London in a couple of weeks." Oh yeah, that'd be fine. And I don't think he realised how much hard work it is. 30 kids constantly on you. But I don't think he realised, well, he says it on the video, I'll send you a link. He was overwhelmed by how enthralling it was to work with his kids who don't have those role models in their lives. Yeah. And he's since had a couple of twins, he's had twin boys.
Yeah, right.
But it's a wonderful experience. And the great thing is, it's a chance for people to play or inspire other people's kids, and then they can take them back at 3:00. So you don't need to have your own kids, just play with somebody else's. It's a brilliant thing to do.
So if people want to do something like this, if we want to get involved with anything to do with STEAM Co, what should they do?
Well, we've got a little campaign which is called Collaborate for Creativity. So if they just look for hashtag Collaborate for Creativity or steamco.org.uk, there's a page there. We've got a co-funder at the moment. We're asking people to chip in some money, maybe £1 or even a few £100, or a company could pay for a day. Yeah. We'd rock up with our little Steamco drop track, which has got everything you need in it to run a creativity festival. Okay. So we've got 30 rocket making kits, 30 ukuleles, 30 newspaper making kits, 30 microbit coding kits.
Oh, lovely.
So we've got a
I want to go and do one of these.
Come and do, I'm going to hold you to this, John. So we've got, in fact, maybe that's the call we should have. Who listening to this podcast wants to come with John this summer term, because we're going across the whole country. We're doing a 13-week tour of Britain. Who'd like to come and run a STEAM Code Day in a school in East London? Because there are kids within a mile of here who've never done any coding. Yeah. And a digital agency in Shoreditch last summer, they sent about a dozen staff up to a school in Tottenham. And I've got a video. The CEO, I taught him in 10 minutes. I've got a 10-minute film that will tell you everything you need to know about how to teach a kid to code.
Oh, great, okay.
And he said, I didn't know how to do this. And he runs a digital agency. He's good at spreadsheets, but he's lost track of the tools, if you like. And again, you can see him foaming at the mouth because he's contributed something to these kids' lives. We work with Barclays Bank. They've trained 15,000 people on digital skills. Okay, they're good at Excel and they can show someone how to turn their iPhone on or reset it. But they come to me, they watch this video, and I've got bank tellers going into schools running coding workshops on behalf of Barclays Bank. Yeah. So we need to get more companies, more individuals.
I think people love that. So you want people who are going to volunteer to come and run a class of some sort, And it doesn't need to be coding.
No, gosh,
For
no.
some people, that might sound a bit scary, but it could be like, what are your other classes?
It's exactly what we've just described. It's like cigar to meet his grandma's. Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Or the Dominic Wilcox lives up the road here, young designer inventor. He's done a load of work with us and is now runs a thing called Little Inventors. We used to create video packs, all the materials. So you could sit there with a child and say, right, the brief is to create a crazy invention to make an old person's life better. Yeah. So let's help them design a walking stick finder or a mobility cart with an iPhone built, or whatever, But just to sit with the children, develop those ideas, or to even just make some squash, or just make sure nobody's running in the corridors. Lots of things that people can do.
So
but
anyone
to be part
can be
of
helpful.
this, it's a great experience.
And also, you want people to fund these things. So if anyone who's in a big corporation and has some control over that budget, or perhaps can twist the arm of somebody who controls the budget.
Well, there are two levels to that. Yeah, I mean, we're asking people just to put a quid in just to be part of it.
So a little as a
patron.
So personal donations, people can
or
pay as little
or
as
a few hundred
pound.
quid to sponsor a day.
Yeah.
But we're actually looking for also. I didn't come here to pitch this, but now you've asked.
No, you should.
We're actually looking for six companies to be our founding sponsors for the next 2 years.
Oh, great.
500 quid a week.
Yeah.
£500 a week over the next 2 years, and a 3 months break clause. If you decide you don't want to do it, or Brexit sort of clears you out, then we can cancel it. Mm-hmm. But we don't just want the money. We want people to also commit to get their employees involved, because
that's a lovely idea, isn't it?
I think
because
so.
Particularly if you're in a job where you know that your job is essentially kind of meaningless. Like a lot of people in finance know there is a deficit.
I've never used that phrase, but they're meaningless. Well, 1,000 viewers drop off.
But I know because I work with people who change careers, right?
Yeah,
and they love the money, and I totally understand why. But they are hungering for some more meaning, and so and also of that retail banking example of being a bank teller. If you find that, I mean, you might get satisfaction from helping the customers, but if you feel like you want to do something more, then what a lovely thing if your employer is funding this thing, and then has a program where you can easily get involved, and maybe they can run their own intro day to get people up to speed, and you can come in, give talks and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I've always said that Seth Godin wrote a book called Your Turn, and I wrote a blog on that because one New Year's Eve, because my car broke down, so I couldn't go anywhere. And Seth sent me 2 boxes as a thank you. It was great.
Really? Yeah.
And I wrote a blog on the back of that saying you might be sick of being a lawyer. I'm not going to say meaning. I know what you mean. Not as meaningful as it could be possibly, because these roles all have some meaning. But I said you don't have to jack it all in and go be a scuba diver or teach yoga in the Maldives, because there's a queue for that.
That's important to realise.
What we're saying is do this a day a month, and there are people in that agency in Shoreditch down the road who are prepared to take a day's holiday to come and work with us. So really, just to finish that pitch, this works for companies, large and small, at 3 levels. It works from at a brand level, particularly if their brand has anything to do with creativity or technology or young people or schools or communities. So the Co-op, Barclays Bank, who are into tech, Google, whatever. It works at that level. It also works purely at a CSR level. Yeah. So if your business is what you might say lacks as much meaning as it might, so you could work purely in a law or financial business, do this because you can demonstrate to your staff and to your customers you do good shit for the community. Yeah. So that's CSR tick. Yeah. And the third level, which I think is priceless, it's employee engagement. Yeah. My God, we didn't go paintballing. You never guessed what we did. Yeah. We made 300 kids have the day of their life. Yeah. And that teacher told me we changed a life today.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And you will do. I mean,
I'm not just saying that.
You've gone and done these things where people build rockets. Is that right? You kind of rocket. I've seen you with this trailer thing. I don't know where you got from somewhere.
Well, that's our pop-up trailer. But so I did a podcast with Richard Atherton on a houseboat, funny enough, and I actually let one of his dynamite rockets off. I'll give you the elevator pitch on this really quick. My dad's 83, volunteers in an Oxfam bookshop and found a book called Rocket Boys in the bottom of the box. 15 years old. And it's about 4 boys growing up in West Virginia in the 50s, coal mining town, didn't want to be coal miners. They saw the Sputnik, with the encouragement of a mum and a dad and a teacher, learned to make rockets and ended up working for NASA.
Oh, wow.
It's a Universal Studios movie. Now, the book's Rocket Boys. The film is called October Sky, which is an anagram of Rocket Boys, which is all about woohoo. Oh, really? And basically, the author, Homer Hickham's, very generously given me the rights to take that into British schools. So it's our foot in the door. So what we do is we go into school, we do a half-day session where I do that as an all-school assembly for 45 minutes, but usually about an hour and a half, because I just keep adding more shit into it, keep going on. And these kids, they love it. We then make paper rockets with 30 kids, and then we fire a dynamite rocket off in the playground when the parents are there at home time. The parents are saying, "Oh my God, that's amazing, we need you back." I said, "Right, we'll have a whip round. I'll come back with a trailer and a bunch of people from a digital shortage agency or the co-op or whatever, and we'll have a whole day. Let's get the community in." Because do you know what? The single most impactful intervention in a child's education is parental engagement or community engagement. It's the number one driver that will have the highest impact on academic outcomes, getting the parents involved. But most parents had such a crap experience in school, they never want to step foot in a school again. Many parents won't even go on a parents' evening.
Wow, really?
But I've got schools in Leeds who feed their parents on parents' evening because they're so challenged financially, the parents will go in for a hot meal.
Yeah.
Those are some of the schools we're working with, as well as private schools. So it's across the spectrum. There's a lot that people can do, and it's really fulfilling. It really is.
Fantastic. And they want to find everything. Is your website the best place, or social media?
It's probably a good place to start, but the way I talk is where I write websites, so it's full of stuff. So it's steamco.org.uk, or search for Collaborate for Creativity hashtag, or even Art Connects 19. That's this festival we're running across the whole year.
And you're on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook?
Yeah, Steamco, ST3AMCO, because somebody already had Steamco, so we're down with the kids using a 3 for an E. And we're going to be doing a whole load of events. So we're going to do an event on, I think, May the 15th is going to be our first Art Of. That's going to be the Art of Festivals, which we're going to do near here, actually, in East London, which will be with one of the creative directors of Glastonbury and a bunch of other people. So we're going to talk about festivals and creativity, but just to get people in the zone, really. So tons of stuff. We'll have to get you involved in some. We're going to get you into a Steamco day. That's it. Okay, we've got that on camera and audio.
Be careful. Once you talk to Nick, he will rope you into something. But I'm happy to do that. Yeah, great. Well, thanks, Nick. That's been brilliant.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. It's really good fun. It's great to see you again. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ideas Lab podcast. Please do subscribe, and if you've enjoyed this episode, it would be great if you could leave us a review. You can get links and details of everything mentioned in the podcast in the show notes, along with photos and video clips from many of our episodes. Just go to theideaslab.org/podcast.